Hey everybody, welcome back to the booth here at the Magic Players Championship 2012 from Seattle, Washington. My name is Marshall Sutcliffe. This is Zach Hill. So we got a chance to see for the first time, at least that I've ever done anything like this, the actual draft happen. That was pretty interesting stuff. We had some controversy. You know, you and I kind of disagreed with some picks,
right,
which is kind of part of the fun of Cube. There's always something to talk about with it. And you and I also got a chance to go check out some of the decks that we're going to be seeing, and there's some sweet stuff out there.
There is some truly incredible decks out there. I mean, basically every single type of deck you can imagine. You know, it really takes me back through the years of Constructed. I mean, there's mono red decks, there's blue control decks, there's reanimator decks, there's mid-range like Trinity green decks. There's the, you know, obviously the decks that we saw on the feed. I mean, basically anything that you can imagine happening is happening in this format.
Lot of ramp decks. I think one of the things that I want to keep an eye on here, Zach, and I want to get your opinion on as we go through the coverage today, is how to balance out consistency versus power, and also just kind of what level of power you want to go for in a deck. We saw some of these decks that are just trying to do broken stuff. They're just trying to say, look, I'm going to do something absurdly powerful. If you can't deal with it, the game's over and I win. And if you do, then I'm willing to take that risk. Versus people that are taking a little bit more of a consistent tack. Sure, their cards are all powerful by normal Magic card standards, but this is Cube.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
you can do huge stuff.
And as an example of that, I mean, we see both Natural Order and Tinker dropping huge threats on the board as early as the second or third turn of the game. We're seeing, you know, fatties being reanimated into play very early on. Cards like Bogart and Hellkite, Woodfall Primus, Gristlebrand.
Gristlebrand, one of my favorites.
Yeah, exactly.
And really the premium target, right? I mean, like as far as when you're talking about reanimation spells, there's kind of two different ways to go, or targets. I mean, you can do a card like Grizzlebrand, which kind of gives you inevitability. It's also just a fantastic creature as a huge flying lifelinker. But you can also go down the other route, which is things like Sundering, Titan, things which affect the board immediately and can even lock up the game for you.
Yeah, and you have to sort of decide, okay, like how reliant am I going to be upon this threat sticking around?
Right.
And of course, we don't want to discount, you know, white weenie, red aggro with burn spells, stuff like that. You don't have to be plopping a 7/7 onto the table to be able to end the game very quickly.
Right. Have you had a chance to look at this yet?
I have not.
I'm showing Zach right now with the matchups that we have, and I'm also showing him which one we're going to have on video.
We're going to be watching John Finkel versus Shouta Yasooka.
We're trying to figure out.
So this is going to be pretty sweet. I'm really
problem.
curious to see how Shouta adjusts to Cube. I don't know how much he's cubed is with this one specifically, but I do know that he's very well known for being extremely creative at making constructed decks.
Right. And Cube is very similar to Constructed.
There's a lot of corollaries there, right?
Right. I mean, you have to be, as you're drafting, you have to have a vision for your deck in ways that, you know, in Limited it's important, but sometimes you just have to have some good cards in your deck. In Cube, you really have to know what your end game is and what you want your final deck to look like. From the very first pick of the very first pack. And I think that's a skill that rewards Yasooka in his style of play.
Yeah, I think so too. And also, you know, he tends to think out of the box. We've seen a lot of his crazy lists from Constructed. The guy doesn't have the normal bounds that you think of when you think to build a deck. And that skill also, I think, is very greatly rewarded by Cube. Now, that being said, you need some experience. I don't know how much he's drafted it. And if you just don't have the repetitions down about what's achievable,
that's true.
You might overstep your bounds.
No, that's absolutely right.
So I think that, and then John's deck, we've got. Did you get a chance to actually look at his final build?
I wasn't able to see it as he was building it because it looked like he finished pretty quickly. It looked like he was on a plan. He knew what he was playing, and that was that. I mean, he's got some extremely explosive draws, an insanely good top end with almost all of the cards that you want in that type of deck, a diversity of different plans, but he's a little bit lacking in the early mana acceleration. And I feel like especially if something like his Palladium Mirror gets destroyed, he's going to be stuck with a lot of expensive cards in his hand.
Right, so he's going to have to manage that. I mean, again, I didn't get a chance to look at his final build either. We got as many as we could, but there's 16 players, and we're out there, hey, do you mind if I take a look at your deck? And also, some of them are still building at this point, and you don't want to interrupt that process.
Yeah, I don't want to get in the way.
As they do it. Now, players are currently resolving mulligans, and we were just told by Sheldon that Finkel's actually going to 5 here. So,
not yet.
Never good.
Sure.
Setting up cameras.
He's got Tinker.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that like going to 5 cards in like a normal game of limited Magic is actually really bad, because a lot of strategies just depend upon grinding your opponent out. In Cube, so many cards are just vastly more powerful than the average card, even in Cube Draft, that some decks mulligan very well.
Yeah.
You know, if you like you said, Tinker, I mean, obviously is huge, but even, you know, a card like Basalt Monolith, right? It's like, oh, okay, my land is 3 lands, Basalt Monolith, and Mirror Battlesphere.
Yeah.
Okay, well, sometimes that's all you need to do.
Right, and what it does mainly is just make it more crimped, right? Like if his deck emulsify and does get an early Battlesphere, he's pretty happy, but if he gets killed, then he doesn't have a big backup.
Or if his hand is just, you know, 2 lands and expensive cards, his deck's not even going to get off the ground.
Then it won't have to go. Okay, we're told that the players are ready, so we're going to send it right down to the feature match area. We're going to be seeing John Finkel versus Shouta Yasooka, and this should be pretty sweet. Our first Q match of the day. I'm excited.
I'm ready to see some magic.
Me too. So let's head down to the feature match area now. All right, welcome to the first round of the Players' Championship 2012 here from Seattle, Washington. My name is Marshall Sutcliffe. I am joined in the booth by Zach Hill. Hey, Zach.
Hey, how you doing, Mark?
We're going to be seeing a match here with John Finkel against Shouta Yasooka, and we are already underway. Now, one thing that we really do have to note here is that John did mulligan to 5 this game, so this is something that's going to factor in throughout the course of it. Obviously.
Yeah. On the other end, he's got a pretty good 5 cards. He's got both Gilded Lotus and Palladium Mirror in his hand to accelerate if he gets to his 3rd land. He's got Gilded Lotus to draw Awakening Zone. Obviously, we talked about how it's so powerful in this deck with opposition, a ton of big spells.
So good. It also, and we don't know exactly what Yasooka is on here, but he's got Grixis colors, and it looks like John has missed his 2nd drop. Wow, Jace the Mind Sculptor in Shouta's hand already. Now, he can't cast it this turn.
Yeah, I mean, John needed his 3rd land drop there so badly, or at least a permanent for Yasooka to repeal. John's got to be feeling really bad right now. Yasooka has Solemn Simulacrum, also has Jace. He's probably going to try and Jace to keep John off a land. John has
Would you disagree? I mean, John does have 2 mana up, both potentially blue. He's just going to go for it.
Yeah.
And John says it resolves. So are you just going to fate seal your opponent here immediately and just keep him off a land?
I was thinking about that. Then I realized John had a sack land in play.
So it
I think you want to
anyway.
just brainstorm right here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, Yasooka, commanding position right now, has a ton of removal in his hand. He's got a powder keg on 1. Obviously, the powder keg can end up blowing up anything John casts. John gets to 3 right now, but I think he's just way too far behind. You do not want to have an empty board against the Jace the Mind Sculptor on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's never good. Now, we don't know how many sack lands Yasooka has. Jace with sack lands is sort of what we're used to seeing when people have Jace.
Right.
In a cube, sometimes you're brainstorming without the ability to shuffle, which is actually significantly less good. Although that being said, it's still pretty awesome, and you do get to draw an extra card every turn as well. So
you're still up a card.
You're still going to bury your opponent in card advantage pretty easily. Although a little bit of a more reasonable clip than we're used to from our buddy Jace. Now it's kind of it's kind of good to see him. I mean, I'm not sure that I'd want to see him that often, but just seeing him every once in a while is kind of cool.
No, it's cool, and he's banned or restricted in so many formats that you don't get to see him do his thing. Yasooka's deck is the type of deck I like to draft a lot. I mean, just a lot of card advantage. He's got some counter spells. He's got ways to remove permanents with value, and you see him main decking cards like Pyroclasm and Fire Spout. John's deck cannot be excited to see those cards.
No, so Shouta knows what types of decks he needed to hedge against.
Right.
And that was, quick or small creature decks, and it looks like he's very comfortable playing, you know, building his deck such that he doesn't lose to those. And we also see a Chandra brainstorm again.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of hurts to watch. We see a wildfire.
Oh, that's pretty spicy.
It looks like he has wildfire along with a lot more mass removal. Looks like blowing up creatures is not a problem for him. So you cast wildfire with Jace on the battlefield, you're in good shape. Now, it is interesting to think about, though. We see a Solemn Simulacrum in his hand, but we don't know if his late game is actually more powerful than Finkel's. Finkel has Karn, Finkel has Sundering Titan, he has Mirror Battlesphere. So we may see the rare case where the end game of a control deck actually is less than that of John's mid-range ramp.
Okay. Solemn Simulacrum, one of my favorite cards. Super happy when it got reprinted in M12. Hopefully it comes back again soon. And I mean, you and I are both spikes, right? And how good does it feel to be in Yasooka's seat right now? I mean, he is in the driver's seat fully. He's got a Jace the Mind Sculptor, a Powder Keg on 2. He's even got the value Simulacrum that can just draw a card.
Right.
All right. So
I will say, John, having this Gilded Lotus on the table is huge. Yasooka has a miscalculation in his hand. And all of a sudden, things are looking pretty good for Finkel. That the Thelanite Hermit can flip with Powder Keg being on 2 counters, so it can't blow up the tokens.
Okay.
You know, and that's 9 damage.
Yeah.
I mean, Yasooka has a Pyroclasm in his hand, but, you know, Gilded Lotus means that his miscalculation is unlikely to do too much work. I don't know. I mean, casting Solemn Simulacrum there is a little bold. You almost want to just pass with Counter Magic mana open and not have to worry about whatever it is your opponent does.
It was a pretty big turn for Finkel.
It was. I mean, now he's making Yasooka's Wildfire look humiliating.
Right.
17.
You know.
So do you Pyroclasm here for sure then?
Yeah, I think so.
You just, because one thing that I've learned about playing with Morphs, I wasn't playing when they were originally out, is that you just kill the thing.
Right.
Like they, I always just go, it probably doesn't do that much. It always does that much.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, like, you don't really care about your Solemn Simulacrum dying because it's going to draw you a card anyway.
Right.
You're ahead on so much advantage that I think you want to just keep the board clear of permanence.
I mean, you have the Jace draw and Sift engine going. You're going to be able to find any answer you need, so you might as well start. You can afford to start just burning them.
Is Yasooka thinking about casting Wildfire here? Oh, okay, we're going to see a Chandra, and he's going to deal 2. Yeah, that's a way better play than Pyroclasming. I thought that was the other Chandra in his hand.
Okay, yeah, this is the original Chandra, so he can take 2 loyalty off of Chandra to kill the Morph.
Yeah, and I think that's what you want to do. Maybe you do 3 because you respect Keldon Marauders, but no, he's not of a blue-green deck. He's going to just do it for 2. I mean, 2 Planeswalkers on Yasooka's side. I think he's going to start face sealing now, making sure he doesn't have to worry about any other big threats.
He did exactly that. Now he's got 2 Planeswalkers on the table. He's got a grip of cards. Like, he's looking pretty good. I wonder what Yasooka's thinking about. What could go wrong here?
Well, certainly what could go wrong is this Primeval Titan resolving. And Finkel has 2 mana to pay for miscalculation.
He does.
I mean, yeah.
Sure.
Like, and again, you know, Finkel from behind still managing to advance his board position very substantially. Yasooka has the Terminate, but it's not like he has a huge clock. I mean, Finkel, obviously, his back is against the wall. You do not want to have your opponent fate sealing you with Jace every turn of the game. Right. But at the same time, I mean, I thought his deck wouldn't really get off the ground this game, and instead he's managed to come and fight.
He has. That said, I don't envy his position.
I mean, he's not winning this game.
Right.
But, you know, like, it certainly could be a lot worse.
Good.
Like, certainly, yeah. Yasooka's like, no, we do not need this conditional counterspell anymore.
He just cycled it.
I think Yasooka's plan is to remove Gilded Lotus with the Powder Keg when he gets the ability to. The Simulacrum battling. I think he wants the Titan to block so he can cast Wildfire, perhaps. He's got the black mana for the Terminate, so I mean, you absolutely have to Terminate before the Primeval Titan attacks you.
3 lands, but one of them is a fetch land. He's going to take it. We were talking about the shuffling, and this is where, you know, the brainstorm effect isn't wildly powerful, but
right.
he does have a shuffle effect, which does bring it right back up into wildly powerful territory.
You know, Yasooka's deck reminds me a lot of like Pat Chapin control decks, where he's like blue-red, splashing black. He's got a lot of card advantage, but he doesn't really have a lot of permission. You know, we've just seen the miscalculation. Instead, it's just like a ton of terrors, you know, or board sweepers, or just ways of removing creatures from the table.
Exactly. Now, we did see Finkel had drafted that Vines of Vastwood, remember?
Right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I don't think it made it to the main, but Looter Ilkor comes down for Shouta. I mean, he's generating a lot of advantage as it goes.
It is going to hurt to get wildfired next turn, which you have to expect is Yasooka's plan. Yeah. Like, I mean, he played Looter Ilkor, which, like, sort of contradicts that. But, I mean, he's going to be able to blow up Gilded Lotus with Powder Keg and then wipe 4 of John's 6 lands off the table, as well as his Eldrazi spawn. We see Repeal targeting Jace the Mind Sculptor. Yasooka says, sure, that's fine. Yeah. And Finkel is mana-decking Vines of Vastwood. I guess his mana creatures like Devoted Druid and Palladium Mirror are just so important that he wants to be able to protect them.
You know, when you can't run actual counter spells, you know, when he didn't get that many of those, you run ones that counter the things that you're worried about, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. Yasooka's deck very interesting here. I mean, he's got just a grip full of burn spells adjacent in his hand, but you know, I feel like he wants to draw a late game threat right here.
Is he thinking about Stagger Shocking here?
I think so.
I mean, he's got Finkel at 14, but it's not exactly in striking range quite yet.
He certainly wants to crack his sack land, though, so that he's not drawing a land next turn.
Right.
All right, so he does have more counter spells in his deck. I think I just saw a Forbid.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if your plan isn't to Wildfire, I don't really know what your plan is right here. He probably just wants to cycle a card with Looter Ilkor, just to look at more cards in his deck. He's got Brainstorm. He can cast Jace.
No box. Okay, take 3.
And all the way down to what, 11 on Finkel's side. Or is that?
So we're going to see the Powder Keg go boom this turn or on Finkel's turn or on Shouta's turn, right?
I certainly can't imagine that you want to let your opponent untap with Gilded Lotus.
Right, and like there isn't a 6 that Shouta's worried about, so he should just let that thing go.
He's got access to 8 mana right here. Maybe you don't Wildfire because you just want Jace on the board. But like I just, you know your opponent's playing a ramp deck. I feel like you want to limit their mana as much as you can. Yeah, he doesn't cast Wildfire, he casts Jace. But, I mean, you know, 3 Eldrazi spawn, your opponent is theoretically able to come over the top of some pretty powerful stuff. You see him draw the Forbid there, but he doesn't have the second blue.
I think he's got it in his hand.
Oh, he does. Okay.
Yeah, he's also got a Lightning Bolt. He's going to ping Finkel with Chandra Nalar. And in response, we're just going to get a draw here.
Sure. Now that you know that you have Forbid in your hand, this game really is over now. I mean, anything he can come over the top with, like we were talking about, Yasooka can protect against that.
And multiple times with Forbid.
Right. Oh, yeah, you have to be planning on buying it back here.
Yeah, he's got so many cards.
Right, okay, Stagger Shock, that's nice. What else is that Brainstorm doing? You know, you've already got a Brainstorm every turn. How greedy are you? Yeah. Kind of a hilarious matchup between Pristine Talisman and Chandra.
I think he's actually attacking Jace with these 2 Eldrazi spawn
tokens. It finds a Vastwood.
So he can Vines one of them. This is pretty awesome. It's gonna eat a Lightning Bolt, unfortunately.
In response, sure.
Oh, we see a Karn as well. That, you know, having access to Karn for Finkel sure would have been sweet, but that Forbid is gonna.
That Lightning Bolt is actually a beating there. It takes him off 7 for Karn. I mean, I guess he has another land to play, but yeah, he's got to go for Karn here. Just hope your opponent doesn't have access to it. I guess Lightning Bolt doesn't matter because he got to spawn this turn.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do see Karn very, very quickly. Yasooka moves to Forbid it. Again, you have to.
Now, what is he going to throw away here? Definitely. Oh, he actually kept the Brainstorm.
Yeah, I guess. guess.
I don't know why. I think I'd keep the stagger shot probably, but
he's
also not entirely relevant as even though Finkel really, I mean, you said it too, like he actually did put up quite a fight there being on a mulligan and facing a turn 4 resolved Jace the Mind Sculptor. But ultimately, Shouta was probably in the driver's seat for the majority of that game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, but that goes to show a player of Finkel's caliber. Like, you can't tilt when you mulligan a bunch. I mean, John's been sitting at this stage on Sunday, you know, what, 12 times now, something absurd. And, you know, sometimes when a huge amount of money's on the line, a huge amount of prestige is on the line, you mulligan. You get mana screwed. Your hand's bad.
Right.
And if that's going to make you mad, you know, if you're just going to tilt and stop playing Magic, then this is not the game for you.
Exactly.
You know, so to be able to sort of persevere through that is hugely important.
Here is Brian Elemental.
All right, we have an update from Sheldon down on the floor. Reduke takes game 1 on the back of Karn.
Okay.
And his first pick, Aeon. He had a chance to ultimate Karn, but apparently didn't need to.
That would be overkill.
So is there any sideboard stuff here? It's a little different to look at than what we're used to.
It is. It's hard to say. I mean, the thing is the players know their opponent's entire decks. Yeah. So you have to expect there to be a fair amount of sideboarding going on. The thing is Yasooka's main deck configuration was very well positioned against Finkel's weenies and ramp. You know, what do you want? You want board sweepers and counter spells.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Looking around at a lot of the decks floating around out there, I've been seeing a lot of that stuff going on. A lot of small creatures and ramp and such. So it's something that you might get a lot of mileage out of those sweepers.
I believe it.
Toby.
I couldn't quite tell what he brought in. I mean, look at that. He does have a ton of burn. He actually cited some of it out.
You can play Magic at a store near you every Friday. Earn Planeswalker points and battle against your friends in Friday Night Magic. September's FNM promo card is Lingering Souls. Ooh. Visit wizards.com/FNM to find a store near you. So, Yasooka, you know, he didn't see a ton of Finkel's deck as you know, we know he has a lot of smaller creatures in there.
Sure.
Yasooka didn't really see many of those. It was more artifact-based ramp, which is also what Finkel has, to be fair.
That's true, and I might actually even be overestimating the amount of smaller creatures in Finkel's deck. I mean, I was focusing on Devoted Druid Palladium Mirror, which are hugely important to his deck.
And both die to Pyroclasm.
Yeah, exactly. Along with Fauna Shaman and Thelanite Hermit. Thelanite Hermit particularly important because it can just kill you if you don't have an answer for it. I mean, 9 damage is not a small amount of damage.
Right.
So you know, but on the other hand, you might just have a bunch of shocks in your hand and have your opponent go tinker into, you know, Sundering Titan, and you would feel embarrassed.
Now
so
Shouta never he never cast Wildfire.
Yeah.
Does that affect anything from Finkel's side? I mean, if Finkel had answers to that kind of a card, he would already be playing them anyway, right?
Well, and in many ways he does. I mean, you see Finkel's artifact mana, like Gilded Lotus in particular, but also Pristine Talisman. Like, that's what you want to be doing against Wildfire, is getting alternative ways of producing mana on the table.
Even Primeval Titan, right? Just puts him like, sure.
Right, okay, yeah, you can blow up 4 my lands. I have a lot more where that came from.
Right.
So it's weird in that I think you want to keep in Wildfire against Finkel's deck because if it does resolve, Finkel just cannot do anything. Unless he just happens to have the Tinker in his hand and didn't cast it already. On the other hand, he has a lot of weapons that naturally allow him to invalidate that strategy. So I think it depends on how risky you're willing to play. Like, do you think you can get into a board position that's advantageous enough that you can put it away with Wildfire?
Yeah, that's the question. And, you know? I mean, knowing what we know about Finkel's deck, I would say no.
Right. Sure.
I don't think... So what I see here is Shouta... He doesn't have enough early things so that a resolved Wildfire, you know, a turn early or you know, wiping out most of your opponent and your mana base. I don't think he's got enough pressure to follow that up, where Finkel can just recover at the same rate he can, or maybe even quicker.
Yeah, and we certainly did not see Yasooka accelerating into that Wildfire in any sort of meaningful way. So it's possible you're just not able to take advantage of it as much as Finkel is. I'm still surprised about the main deck Brainstorm. That's a card I find to be a trap a lot of the time in Cube. Like when you can't shuffle your deck, it just is, you know, it's like a bad cantrip.
It is. I think it's. I don't run it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if I had a ton of shuffles, I would, no problem. But how many do I need?
Good.
Sure.
5?
Yeah, right. I mean, sometimes I guess you just want. I mean, Yasooka does have Trinket Mage. He has 2 sack lands. He has Solemn Simulacrum, and like, you know, you draw a card, which you do some percentage of the time. So maybe it's worth it, but it's certainly a card that's way more powerful in Legacy than it is in Cube.
Absolutely. All right, so Looter Ilkor for Yasooka, and it's going to be a Basalt Monolith for Finkel. So Finkel makes a big stand here. He's now representing, you know, any number of huge threats that Yasooka has to be aware of.
And also, very importantly, he has the Tinker in his hand. Now, Finkel's hand is just basic lands and Tinker. So, I mean, he is all in on that Tinker, but if he is able to resolve a Sundering Titan right now, it is an absolutely back-breaking play.
Right.
I mean, it can take out all of Yasooka's lands. And if Yasooka cracks the Bloodstained Mire to get his Badlands, which he's not going to do.
But he is tapping out here, and he's going to play a Trinket Mage, so it looks like we're going to see the Tinker come. Yeah. Oh.
Well,
does this change anything, or is Sundering Titan still just the plan? It doesn't.
If you're asking me, Sundering Titan is the plan. Like, what? Pithing Needle does not stop Titan.
Right.
You get your opponent's mountain and island off the table. You have a 7/10 against a 2/2 and a 1/1.
Yeah, and one of them has Shadow, right?
Yeah, right. His 1/1's certainly not going to block.
Right.
I mean, Finkel, you have to. Oh, and see, Finkel
Revoker.
drew a Revoker too, which like you're just going to deploy on the board to get some threats.
Tapping those together.
Yeah. I'll Tinker sacrificing Basalt Monolith.
Yeah. All right. So, right there in front.
Like, yeah, maybe you get Mirror Battlesphere here. What, Jar? Really?
He might just be considering his options. I mean, it feels like making a 7/10 that blows up 2 of your opponent's 3 lands is pretty sweet.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, let's
and that's
do
what
that.
it does. And we were talking about this earlier, Marshall. Like, a lot of Cube games, I think a lot of players, like, you know, you want to increment advantage. You want your deck to do something. I think it feels, especially when you're playtesting, a lot less satisfying sometimes to just win games by announcing a card on turn 3 that ends the game, like Tinker does. But you got to remember, Magic used to be about doing that.
Yes.
And like, you know, game 1, we saw Yasooka's deck pile all these advantages together to do all of this stuff. Finkel's deck just cast Tinker.
Yeah.
Yeah, just cast a spell and look at the board, you know?
And I personally think this is fantastic. Also, I don't know if you noticed, so Finkel had a floating mana. He cast Phyrexian Revoker, naming Jace the Mind Sculptor. And guess what Shouta has in his hand?
Oh, man.
That would do nice to, you know, bounce the Sundering Titan.
Yeah, and that's exactly the interaction that Finkel's playing around. You know, you have to anticipate. You're in the driver's seat. You just did something very powerful. What are your opponent's outs? And, you know, he remembers to use Revoker in order to hedge against that.
We're getting some updates from Sheldon on the back tables. Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa is up 1 game against Owen Turtenwald. I got a chance to look at Owen's deck. I didn't get a chance to see PVs, but apparently Owen was applying massive pressure to PV, and he was able to equalize and come back and take down the first game there. If you're just joining us here in Seattle, we are in game 2 of John Finkel versus Shouta Yasooka. And Finkel has a pretty commanding board presence at the moment with a Sundering Titan staring down a lowly Trinket Mage. The Phyrexian Invoker that you see on the table has named Jace the Mind Sculptor, which incidentally is a card that Shouta has in his hand.
And as big of an advantage as Finkel has here, look at how
interesting.
embarrassing the rest of his hand is.
What do you think about that? He attacked with the Revoker, and it prompted a trade with the Trinket Mage.
Given that Yasooka is at 13, okay, he's at 13 now, so he's trying to make the Titan lethal in 2 attacks. I don't know that I like that attack with Invoker, because you know Yasooka can play his 3rd land, and then you attack, and then he plays his 4th land and bounces your Sundering Titan.
Right.
And I mean, Yeah, I don't know. I feel like having that on the board is huge. I mean, what he's probably thinking about is that Yasooka can just burn it with one of the many burn spells we saw already. But I kind of want to make him show me that burn spell first.
And make him use up the mana. When your opponent's sitting on 2 lands, using up one of them for any portion of these next 2 turns is pretty important.
That's a really
also,
good point,
one of the things, Zach, that we're looking at here is one of his lands is a fetch land. That just, that's again, each point of life here can matter. It just depends on what Shouta can come up with, because as it stands, he's on a 2-turn clock.
Yeah, right. And you see the literal core there. Ordinarily, you can chump block with a 1/1. Centering Titan doesn't have evasion, but literal core has shadow, so you cannot do that.
Yeah, not an option.
Right, and Yasooka now has his 4th land for the Jace that he's holding. He's got miscalculation up if Finkel tries to do anything. Finkel, you see, been playing all of his islands, even though he has forests in his hands, so when the Titan leaves the battlefield, he doesn't have to blow up another one of his lands.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't notice that. Is that a Worn Power Stone?
That is, in fact, a Worn Power Stone.
I do like that card.
So it's very likely that we're going to see Jace next turn. Now, Vines of
Vastwood
doing so much work. This is why Finkel's a master. We're kind of like, LOL, Vines of Vastwood not going to be played. It's just been the actual best card all of these matches.
This is too funny.
Like, how bad are you going to feel? I hate to laugh.
Oh, he is going to. Yeah, but I mean, come on. This is part of the excitement that we get out of Q drafts. We get to see combinations of cards that you never would normally see.
I will give my creature.
If we were hanging out last night. If I would have said, all right, what's going to happen is Jace the Mind Sculptor is going to come down, and it's going to try to bounce a Sundering Titan, which is going to get Vines of Vastwood. I don't think you would have bought that story.
So the Vines of Vastwood. Okay, I get that. Is he playing like a mono green aggro deck? Well, no, his board is 4 islands.
Yeah, obviously.
Excuse me. Oh, it's just such a blowout.
That is devastating.
That packs up the cards.
The scoop from Shouta.
I mean, this is why Cube Draft is so fun, Marshall. I think especially for players that have played the game a long time, you see interactions that you would just never come up in any other context.
Wow, that's sick. And pretty fortunate draw there. Finkel was on 2 lands left in his hand.
His draw was hideous.
No, I'm talking about drawing the vines.
Oh, drawing the vines.
Yeah.
Very fortunate top deck with all the other cards in his hand being blanks. I mean, Finkel, the cards he had in that game that didn't produce mana were actual Phyrexian Revoker, Tinker, and Vines of Vastwood.
Right.
That's all he needed.
Right, and those were the cards he needed. I mean, there was a lot of cards that he could have drawn that were that didn't interact in that way, because he doesn't have a whole lot of ways to stop. He doesn't.
Right.
I mean, counters and stuff like that. He's a little bit more reliant on just kind of having a better plan on the table. But that Vines of Vastwood did serious work for him there. That was really impressive.
It goes to show why he's a master.
Vines of Vastwood. Zazzle lets you create a variety of products with Magic the Gathering images. There are tons of classic and modern Magic images to choose from that can adorn everything from iPad and iPhone skins to greeting cards, posters, binders, stickers, and collectible stamps. For more information, visit wizards.com/magicmerchandise. Wow, Vines of Vastwood. Do you think I need to, maybe have Finkel sign a Vines of Vastwood? It's like his signature card now.
I don't know. Finkel has a lot of signature cards.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a card
years
that was picked in that draft that is his invitational card, Shadow Mage Infiltrator. He's also just known for playing blue in general.
Yeah,
right. He's very well known for being a big counter spell, counter magic guy, and for being a control player. But little did we know, Vines of Vastwood is actually.
You bring up something. How awkward would it be to just beat Finkel with a Shadow Mage Infiltrator in the Q draft? Right? You're like, I'm really sorry, man.
Yeah. Right. Fading and vanishing.
Ask him if he's having any regrets about designing it. All right. So I see a Karn Liberated in Finkel's opener here. I don't know if he's got any big ramp spells.
Make sure I'm getting this right.
Yeah, I can understand that. I get why you want it against a control deck like Yasooka's, though. I mean, he's going to try and grind you out of resources, and to be able to get all of those back is exceedingly valuable. I believe, is that a Cold Steel Heart that Finkel has on the left side of his hand right now? Yeah, there we go.
Blue.
Okay.
Did he say?
Good.
I didn't hear.
I didn't catch it.
I don't think it's entirely relevant. I mean,
Fading means if you
Well, it might be. Is Finkel main decking Armageddon, or is that not a thing?
oh
that's
yeah, that
happening?
would be if he named white. That would be
last one more time.
different.
He certainly has Armageddon in his pool, and Cold Steel Heart on white into Armageddon against the control deck would be very valuable, but it's possible that's just not what his plan is. Yasooka attacking with the Looter Ilkor, probably going to discard Consecrated Sphinx. It's a 6-mana card. It's not going to come into play for a while, and slamming down that Powder Keg, you know, just wants to keep Finkel's mana in check. I think that what you want to do for John here is just get that opposition onto the table as soon as you can. You know Yasooka doesn't have counter magic mana up.
I mean, he's got 1 blue.
Sure, I mean, he could force spike it, in which case you'd feel bad.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's only 1 force spike at the table. You
Right.
haven't seen it yet. I think you just have to capitalize on this opportunity.
4. Oh.
That also sort of gives every creature you play pseudo haste, in that it turns it into a kind of Rashadan Port or an Icy the turn that you use it. So,
and that's just devastating against a deck like Yasooka's, right?
Oh,
taking him off of his mana, even 1 or 2 mana per turn is just going to set him back so far he's not going to be able to come back.
Yeah, and I think right now, too, you might want to just neutralize that Looter Ilkor.
Oh, is that right? Just to keep him from sifting through his deck?
Right, he's playing in his deck for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have to take damage, which is not insubstantial, but most importantly, like, you're just giving him, you're letting him look at all of the specialized cards that he has access to.
And you're letting him get rid of the ones that he doesn't care about.
Right.
Yeah, which is huge.
Well, and he's about to discard a land, which Finkel's going to see. When your opponent's discarding lands to Looter Ilkor, you actually have to be a lot more scared of that type of card, because, like, now it's basically just getting him card advantage.
Ah, yes.
You know, he knows the lands are additional. He doesn't need them anymore. They're excess, so it just draws him a card. Now we see a Trinket Mage come out. Yasooka just keeps his deck in his hand, goes and gets Pithing Needle again for most likely the opposition that's already on the table.
All right, a little update from Sheldon again. Ochoa has equalized against Reduke on the back of a Mere Battlesphere. So they're at 1-1 back there.
2 cards left.
They're going to be playing the decider now.
The Pithing Needle there is absolutely devastating.
What did the Pithing Needle name? Opposition?
I'm presuming opposition.
Obviously.
We see that Gilded Lotus just so that Karn can come out next turn and start doing its work.
Yeah, this is actually an interesting board state as well, because Yasooka does have 3 power, and that's relevant for Karn, because if he goes Karn, blow up your needle for for example, or your mountain, then Karn dies, because Karn would be at 3.
Yeah. That is super important. Finkel, like, I don't know, I might have cast Genesis there. Like, having a creature on the table is so huge. Like, you stop 2 damage and you put Yasooka on a clock, and like, what's he gonna do? Kill your Genesis? You know, but at the same time, I mean, having Lotus on the table is obviously it's Gilded Lotus, so I can understand.
He's just going for Karn Liberated here. He's got 2 mana to pay for the only counter spell that he actually saw. I believe, or actually there was a Forbid or whatever, but yeah, he's just gonna run it in there.
You're certainly not gonna play around Forbid, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do?
Exactly.
Not cast spells.
Right.
Is that a desertion in Yasooka's hand? It's certainly some piece of Richard Kane Ferguson-esque art.
It does look like that. I don't know what card that is now.
3 cards.
I think so. Like, you can desertion a Karn. You're just spending a lot of mana for a cancel.
Right.
And I think he's got to think about how relevant that is at this point. But I mean, you cannot let Karn resolve. Bad things happen to you if you let Karn resolve.
All right, we are confirmed that it's desertion, and sure enough, he is going to cast it. He just has to there.
How do you beat a Karn?
You cannot let Karn resolve.
You know, maybe you can beat a Karn if your opponent's not at 14 life. When your opponent's at 14 life, you're not gonna. That's not what you want to be doing.
Right. So he does have a reasonable follow-up play with the Fauna Shaman.
And Fauna Shaman with Genesis in his hand.
With Genesis in his hand, so he could get some real work out of Genesis. Maybe I like Genesis a lot more. If you
I'll tell you what, too, this Looter Ilkor doing work. Yasooka actually quite mana flooded, but he's about to discard, I think, the 2nd land to Looter Ilkor.
He drew a Pyroclasm off of the Looter. How important, like, are you willing to lose both of your creatures in order to take away the Fauna Shaman here. I mean, we know how powerful that card can be if you can't get rid of it otherwise.
I agree with you in principle. I think he just wants to cast Kiga right now.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you know, he's... Okay.
Oh, okay, so he's going to Powder Keg, and that does the same thing.
Sure.
And then Kega. Yeah. All right. I like that line.
The looter, actually, I was wrong earlier. He's actually discarded 3 lands to the looter. So, I mean, that card's done its work. It's dealt some damage, got him through his deck. And John, you know, really looking to overcome ways to deal with that Kega.
I mean, Finkel's on 11. That's a 2-turn clock here. 7/7.
Well, very, very... because of the Trinket Mage. I was going to say, 11 is very much not 10.
Yes,
which is...
But I'm assuming the Trinket Mage is going to come in. He's paying for... Yeah, okay, so blow up all of those for Sundering Titan. So this is going to help stabilize him a lot, although Kega has flying, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's going to be an issue.
And you see Bolt drawn on Yasooka's side of the board, which can go straight to the dome.
Which is a turn here.
Yeah. I mean, Finkel needs to answer that Pithing Needle right now or be able to deal with Kega. He drew Mirror Battlesphere, but that's just not going to cut it. I mean, he's got a ton of power on the board.
He does. He would need another turn, basically, but the Lightning Bolt would make the difference here. So he's going to play the Battlesphere first to make sure that it resolves. Then he's going to so that he can attack with the Sundering Titan and not just lose on board.
Right, exactly. I mean, if Yasooka can deal with a 4/7 and 4/1, then more power to him.
But he doesn't know, however, though, that Yasooka does, in fact, have the Lightning Bolt, and the ensuing attack from Kega will wrap it up.
I can't overestimate how savage that Pithing Needle was this game.
That was sick, because that would have just completely changed the complexion of that game in every way.
Yeah.
I mean, everything from after resolving a Sundering Titan to tap down your last 2 lands, you know, to keeping the creatures at bay so that he doesn't get beaten down. He can buy enough time because...
not getting killed by Kega.
Yeah, a 4/7 and a 7/10 and 4 1/1s, like, you know, they're going to get in. And again, neutralizing Kega completely.
Right, because John blew up 3 of Yasooka's lands.
Yeah.
So he would be able to lock out his other 3 lands with the tokens and still survive past the Kega. But Pithing Needle shut all that down, and also the Trinket Mage gave Yasooka enough of a clock that he could finish him off with 2 Kega attacks and a bolt.
Yeah, that Lightning Bolt was pretty critical, because I think if John gets to untap, he can apply... I mean, he really does need to find an answer for that Pithing Needle. That was a huge play, locking out that opposition. But... yeah, it turns out that that Pithing Needle for 1 mana can sometimes just lock up a game.
Yeah, right. And Yasooka, to his credit, had the discipline to desertion the Karn. I mean, if you think about it, obviously it's correct. You don't want to let Karn resolve. But, I mean, you know, hard casting 5 mana cancel is just not the most exciting thing.
Yeah. We're getting a look here at Owen Turtenwald versus PV. And right now, PV's up a game, and we're in the middle of game 2.
17.
Owen looking like he has, what, a 3-color aggro deck with a bunch of tokens.
Yeah.
PV on some sort of red-white-blue control deck. It looks like Elspeth's been activated twice, and Wake Thrasher's sitting there with a ton of permanence on the table.
And a massive Primordial Hydra is going to come down on Owen's side. It's going to be a 5/5 now, which means that during his upkeep, it's going to double. It's going to be a 10/10. And once it hits 10/10,
gets to trample. I cannot handle the type of interactions that happen in Cube Draft.
Yeah, it's so sick.
You're just, where do you see a board that looks like this?
Yeah. Now, I don't know how big that Wake Thrasher is currently.
I believe it's a 7/7.
I think it's just the lands that untap, so that would make it a 7/7, like you said, Zach.
Merely a 7/7.
Yeah. Paltry 7/7.
Yeah, not important. Owen, though, just not threatened by it at all, tapping all of his tokens to get through for even more with
probably
Cloud
was
Goat
to
Ranger.
kill Elspeth Terrell. I didn't see, but do you think that's what happened?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either.
Just definitely.
I don't know life totals currently. I think we're working on getting those. We'll know soon, though, you know, whether we see that Student of Warfare jump in front. All right, so Damo to Rosa is on 9, and Owen is at 17 currently. So he could actually just take this hit if he really wanted.
Yeah, that's probably what he's going to do. You don't want to throw away Student of Warfare. You certainly are not about to allow your Primordial Hydra to die.
Right.
But, you know, it's a big hit to take. And you've got, you know, PV has a lot of defense. But, I mean, Owen's board is is in a very commanding position right now. You've got Stirring Wildwood that can attack if it needs to. Cloud Goat Ranger, a giant Primordial Hydra.
You know, I bet you that's what happened, by the way. He probably sent his Cloud Goat Ranger into the skies.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
You should just hit it for 5, get through all those tokens.
And so he can kill
block a soldier and block Wake Thrasher.
Okay, so he does, in fact, 15. Block Wake Thrasher. I guess, I mean, 7's a big number.
Yep. Sure.
Okay, and we see a Johnny Vengeant
you go up to 12.
for PV, and he is going to Helix.
Helix Cloud Goat Ranger. I suppose? Yeah, very close to being able to Helix Primordial Hydra, but not all the way there. Now, interestingly...
Is that a Wrath of God?
I can't tell. That is a mirror entity.
Oh, a mirror entity.
Mirror entity, very, very, very good right now. It actually makes Primordial Hydra even bigger.
It does, because Primordial Hydra's power and toughness are based on the counters that it has and not an actual power and toughness.
Right, so it becomes a 4/4, and then it has 10 counters on it, which actually make it bigger.
Yep.
Sort of a quirky rules interaction.
And the trample still stays.
PV snap blocking the 3 of those tokens, but he's going to take a huge hit right here.
I think PV only has 1 card in hand. He has access to blue, white, or...
So PV's going to take 14 here. The thing says he's at 12. Is that going to be game?
I think that's just game. Yeah, okay.
I thought for a second we forgot to incorporate the 3 life from a Johnny, which would put him at exactly 1 on the counter attack, but that was not, in fact, the case.
All right, so it looks like Owen has now equalized.
How long do we have?
1 game to 1. We haven't got a great look at PV's deck. I'm not 100% sure what he's on. It looked like blue-white base with a little bit of red, maybe just for a Johnny, and now something else.
Yeah, we're getting a chance to see him sideboard, but he's doing it so rapidly. He knows exactly what he wants to do.
Yeah, this is going to game 3 here, so you know he feels probably fairly confident with what's going on.
They're shuffling like crazy, trying to get the match finished in time.
I did get a chance to look at Owen's deck, and looked very solid. You can see there he's got some powerful stuff. Looking to face a greater challenge? Take your game to a Grand Prix and see how you fare against the best players in your region, as well as the top visiting Magic pros. Upcoming Grand Prix include Costa Rica, Moscow, San Jose, California, and Philadelphia. For more information, visit wizards.com/Grand Prix.
The players, The players continuing to shuffle up. You said Owen's deck looked pretty good. What are some of its hits besides the stuff we saw?
It just looked very consistent to me. His mana was quite good. He had some ramp abilities so that he could get out something biggish, but also his mid-range spells were just all very solid. I kind of view this as a cube equivalent of like a deck that is going to not be super greedy, is going to play solid, powerful stuff that is going to keep pressure on you and make you do something.
Right. I mean, and like what we see is opening hand right now with Elspeth and Knight of the Reliquary. I mean, I feel like decks like this get a bad rap. People really like the ramp decks. People like going over the top, but like ramp decks are really vulnerable to disenchants, and like they're really draw dependent. I think they're kind of bad on the mulligan a lot of the time. Also,
just like facing a deck that has a bunch of hard counter spells.
Yeah, right, exactly. Your big threats just aren't going to get through. Owen's deck, meanwhile, just is playing, you know, potent threats turn after turn after turn, and has a lot of range and a lot of resiliency. I mean, I really like decks like his.
Yeah, I think they're fine. I mean, you know, you and I, Zach, earlier were talking about how you manage the overall power level of your deck. Where are you trying to go huge and broken, or are you trying to go solid and powerful? Well, Owen is definitely on the solid and powerful range, but the thing I like about his deck is that it keeps pressure on.
Right, and calling it, you know, like it's only compromising in power in terms of raw card power very slightly.
Yeah.
I mean, Knight of the Reliquary, one of the best 3-drops ever. Elspeth, one of the best 4-drops ever.
Okay, but compare that to like what John Finkel was doing in the round before. He played a 3-drop and it made a 7/10 that blew up 3 lands.
Oh, for sure. No one's going to say that it's on the level of tinkering out a Sundering type.
Yeah,
but
that
like,
to me is powerful.
Yeah, sure. But like, I mean, you know, Elspeth can beat a Sundering type.
Yeah,
you know?
That is true. Elspeth, to me, actually is, you know, very powerful. Again, keeping the pressure on. Really like that. All right, so Stomping Ground for Owen. I know he's got Devil's Play in his hand. That's a card that can finish up or take out something key.
Yeah, a lot of time you just cast Devil's Play.
Jade Mage.
Yeah, Jade Mage actually, like, really, it sort of looks underwhelming. It's not a card that's been a constructed all-star, but, you know, it's very valuable to have something on curve to cast while also always having things to do with your mana.
You know, the thing I really like about Jade Mage is that when you play it against a control deck, it's all you need.
Yeah.
Like, they have to answer it at some point.
PV's hand is maximally awkward. Has a Dissipate that he can't cast and a Fire Ice that doesn't quite kill Knight of the Reliquary.
Oh, that's a bummer for him. Now, so he is hoping, though, to get value from his Fire Ice by taking out the Jade Mage and another creature at some point here, right?
Maybe. I mean, I think what he wants Owen to do is attack and then absolutely blow him out with Restoration Angel. Which I think isn't. Yeah, there it is. We see it at the end of his hand. So Owen wisely plays around the Restoration Angel or just wants to use the Knight of the Reliquary to get a land.
I mean, remember, if PV does Restoration Angel here, now Owen has ramp ability. He can cast a 5-drop here if he wants.
Yeah, and he can also Devil's Play if he wants to. He can make a token if he wants to. He has a lot of options. Certainly, this is now a time for him to resolve Elspeth if that's what he wants to stick
it.
As well.
Now, he's going to resolve Elspeth. She'll go up to 5, but she will be under pretty serious pressure from Restoration Angel if that is the case. Another option Owen has here is to let this thing die and then finish off the Restoration Angel with a Devil's Play.
I like that play a lot, actually. And just grow your Knight of the Reliquary and sort of force him to show you an answer.
Yeah.
You know, you're not meaningfully down cards too much because you can always flash the Devil's Play back. You're not going to have your Elspeth get threatened by Restoration Angel.
Right, because Restoration Angel is pretty tough to get rid of. You know, like, the Devil's Play will do it, but you don't necessarily want to let him untap.
This is a very cute interaction with Knight of the Reliquary going to get a sack land.
Yep.
He's got,
Go.
And he does just that, takes out the Angel. But all of a sudden, his Knight of the Reliquary is getting huge.
Yeah, very unclear why he Devil's Played it for so much, though, given that it already had 2 damage on it for the Jade Mage.
Yeah, I don't know why you would want to keep some mana up just for...
Ruhan
is that Ruhan?
of the Fomori.
Wow, I did not... You know, that's funny, because that's a card that you see go pretty late.
Well, Ruhan goes in exactly 1 deck, but in that deck it is a 4-mana 7/7. You may ask what the drawback is. I mean, it kind of has to attack every turn. I'm sure you're going to be really disappointed about attacking your opponent for 7 every turn.
Yeah.
A huge hit here, but Owen top decked the Path to Exile, and it looks like it may not even matter.
Yeah. Ruhan coming from the Commander decks. And, you know, he's got an interesting Commander interaction in that at the beginning of combat on your turn, you choose an opponent at random, and Ruhan has to attack that player if able. Now, when we play normal Magic here, just 1 versus 1, that just means he has to attack every turn. Okay, so what do you think about this? Owen decided just to main phase. He's like, path it, get it out of here. He just didn't want to have to deal with it. Now, one thing about Ruhan is that, you know, he doesn't have trample. Right. He doesn't have flying. Like, the tokens from Elspeth will block it indefinitely.
Yeah, I think against red, white, blue, I think you have to assume that those tokens can get killed somehow. That said, I mean, I don't know that I would have wanted to miss the attack off Knight of the Reliquary. Now, interesting interaction there. He had 1 Elspeth out. PV casting the more expensive Elspeth to destroy them both via the Planeswalker version of the Legend rule.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that, like, a lot of times you're pretty unhappy when you have to do that because he got an activation, but in this case, pretty minimal.
Yeah.
You know, soldier token, you paid 1 extra mana. You don't feel like you're getting ahead necessarily, but getting Elspeth Knight Errant off the table is pretty exciting.
You're right. Yeah, you're certainly more ahead than if they had Elspeth Knight Errant. Yeah, I don't know that I like Owen's series of plays there. I think I probably would have just pathed it, cast Mirror Entity, and attacked with Knight of the Reliquary, putting a little more pressure on PV.
Okay.
Like, I like to save my Elspeth for when I can really use the Angelic Blessing ability to maximum effect.
Okay.
And, like, just running it out, making a token, it's not bad, I guess, but, like, Knight would have attacked for 5 there, and that's, you know, that's a lot of damage.
I think Knight's a 5/5 already, right?
Well, I think it's a 6/6 now, is it not?
Maybe now, but I think there's 3 lands in the yard.
There's the first sack land he used to get Stomping Ground, the second sack land he tutored up, the land he activated to get that sack land, and then the land he activated last turn. So I think it's a 6/6.
So, but I mean, if he was going to jump it in the air with Elspeth, it would have been, what, an 8/8 or whatever?
Oh, yeah, for sure. All right, we see Fire taking out Mirror Entity and the remaining token.
Yeah, So and we're confirmed there are four lands, in fact, in his yard.
So if you're Owen, I mean, you got to just keep attacking with a knight and make PV show you an answer, right?
Right.
Getting him all the way down to 2, and PV really struggling right here. Deranged Hermit.
Deranged Hermit is going to get dissipated.
Now, the thing that does signal is that PV probably doesn't have a Wrath effect, some sort of Pyroclasm or whatever to do with that red mana.
Right. I think the last card in Owen's hand is a Huntmaster of the Fells, which is actually pretty insane because it will present, since Paulo's on 2,
right.
It'll present 2 lethal threats to go along with the Knight of the Reliquary, and he can just do nothing.
Right, yeah, you can just pass the turn, say go, and make your opponent show you an answer. Yeah. PV has spells in his hand. Looks like he's going to...
That is a Tandem Lookout and a Morph.
And that Morph is Fathom Seer.
Okay.
So I think, awkwardly, PV does not have 2 islands.
Doesn't have 2 islands to return. Now, Fathom Seer is a 1/3, which can block, you know, a 2/2, a 2/2
right.
indefinitely.
Paulo resorting to chumping right now with a Tandem Lookout. No one piles on the pressure with Huntmaster.
Owen is just relentless here.
20.
I tell you what card has been bad is Spell Pierce
has been
it just the entire game.
Yes, it has just been a dead card. Owen's deck is largely creature-based, and PV extends the hand. Again, the pressure. You know, Owen was able to just keep pressuring him and not let PV get to the point where he can use cards like Fathom Seer, you know, getting a couple, you know, finding that second island. He made a lot of cards irrelevant in PV's hand, like we saw the Spell Pierce didn't do anything. We saw the Elspeth was just a defensive Elspeth. You know,
and Ruhan, which may have stabilized, would not have stabilized for long against Knight of the Reliquary. He could actually just keep growing until PV may have even had to attack into it. And the Path to Exile from Owen made that, of course, totally irrelevant.
Yeah. Hey, welcome back to the booth. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. This is Zach Hill. And, man, this stuff has not disappointed. You know, you and I were pretty stoked to get a chance to see Cube in action here under the cameras. We both cubed a bunch. You've cubed DI, as you would say.
DI cubes.
But getting to see it high-level play under the cameras and getting to commentate it, that's pretty sweet. And we saw some huge stuff go down.
There's nothing like Cube Draft, I think. I mean, you know, it can be kind of confusing to follow. I mean, there's cards from all of Magic's history, you know, only one of each and everything. You know, you're not seeing decks like, oh, there's 4 of this, 4 of that. Each draft contains, you know, processing it is tremendously challenging. But for players of this caliber that are capable of doing that, you get some true Magic unlike anything else you've ever seen. I mean, how many other times, you know, Vines of Vastwood on Sundering Titan.
that was the play of the day so far.
And then, you know, coming right back, Yasooka with one of the best pithing needles I've ever seen in my life.
That was a very high-level pithing needle, as it turns out, here at the Players' Championship.
And the other thing that's amazing to me is just seeing cards from, like, across the years, you know, interact with each other. I mean, you know, you see Knight of the Reliquary alongside Deranged Hermit.
Yeah.
You know, you see Fire Ice alongside Restoration Angel. You know, some things really from all throughout Magic's history. It just reminds me of how long the game's been around.
You know, and it's great for a player like me as well. There was a time when I wasn't playing.
Sure.
I've come back, so there's this gap for me. And I've learned most of the cards and picked up a lot of it. But, you know, there's a lot of these cards that I'm seeing how they actually work. I have to have them say, look, this is how it works in the game. This is why you want to play it. And then I get it.
Yeah,
you know?
of course.
And I'm sure a lot of the viewers at home feel similarly. You know, there's some cards just like, oh, I wasn't playing when that card was out. But we get a chance to see them here. Like you said, it kind of gives us this view of the highlights of Magic's history. And I got to say, smashing those together, you know, is just fantastic for us to watch, you know, from a viewer perspective.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and even other things that are just kind of funny. You know, you saw Jace fighting alongside Chandra.
Yes.
You know, it's like the inverse of the dual deck. And you don't even get to see Jace the Mind Sculptor cast in that many formats anymore. So it's great to be able to see these cards in formats where they're not too good.
You know, I was pretty excited to see Jace at the table, I can't
lie. Yeah, it was awesome.
Okay, looks like we're ready to head back to the studio, and we're going to send it over there now. After that, we're going to come back with more Cube action.